Okay, let's call the Fire District Board meeting of May 18th. Hey, it's May 18th. To order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you all join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think we need to practice that a little more.
Actually, Brooks did it.
Yeah, Brooks did it.
Yeah, he did.
Thank you, Brooks. All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Aldrich?
Here.
Beckman?
Here.
Fox?
Here.
Verplank?
Here.
Phelps? Hold on, I don't know why he keeps muting himself.
Probably Vicky doing that.
There you go, Scott. Okay. And then Taru?
Here.
Poland, and Miller.
Here.
Okay. And then also it looks like Peter and Chief Janik are here as well.
Yes.
All right, please mute your cell phones and try not to text too much during the meeting. Can we have an approval of the agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Pullen and a second by somebody, Scott, maybe?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yep.
All right, by Scott, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Poland,
Yes.
Phelps,
Yes.
Aldrich,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Verplank,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. Can we have the approval of the minutes from the April 20th meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the April 2020 meeting as drafted.
Have a
I'll
second?
support.
Okay, we have a motion by Fox and support by Aldrich to approve the April 20th minutes. Is there any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Fox,
Yes.
Aldrich,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Verplank,
Yes.
Phelps,
Yes.
Poland,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
And then can I have a approval of the minutes of the special meeting on April 23rd?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April 23.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion by Beckman and a second by, was that you, Stacy?
No, me, Taru.
Oh, True. Second by True. Is there any discussion? We have a roll call vote, please.
Yes, ma'am. Beckman,
Yes.
Poland,
Yes.
Aldrich,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Verplank,
Yes.
Phelps,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, could we have public comment now, please, on agenda items only? If you care to make a comment, please raise your hand. You can use the raise your hand button, or if we don't see you, just chime in, please.
Brooks, you can go again.
Yeah.
Get on the record. Good man.
Oh.
Brooks is raising his hand. Hold on, let me unmute him real quick.
Okay, just a minute, Brooks, we got to unmute you. Okay.
There we go.
ahead.
I'm thankful for my family. Thanks for making my birthday special. I didn't really know what you said.
Okay, Brooks, it was our pleasure
Yes.
Very welcome.
to make your birthday special.
Thank you for the beautiful thank you card.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love your card on the back there. That's great.
a good day.
Okay, thanks, Brooks. Thanks
Bye,
for coming to
Brooks.
the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brooks?
Anybody else? All right, moving on. We have requests for payments. First, there's a budget amendment. Peter, you want to explain this?
Hold on, let me unmute him real quick too.
Yeah, you got
There you
time.
go.
I'm unmuted. How long do I have before you switch it to mute? Okay, so we'll start at the top. I don't know, let me see what page this is. You
Take your time. You only have 5 minutes.
have item 8A, page 8. Okay, so we'll start with the revenues. The first line item is basically the city of Saugatuck decreasing tax revenues, a small increase in fire services, an increase in inspection and plan review fees that we collected. I'm sure a decrease in plan reviews, an increase in cost recovery, an increase of, at $127,000 is basically the FEMA grant that we got for the headsets, and then an increase in interest income. Board salaries, an increase in expense due to raising your guys' pay during the middle of the fiscal year. An increase in the chief's salary is based on his after his review and his increase in salary. A decrease in some expense for officer salaries, an increase on the career firefighters. Operational wages, that was an increase. The paid on call stipend is a decrease. The fire calls are down, that's a decrease. The medical calls, somewhat of a small decrease. Hourly training is an increase, along with the special events, an increase. Worker comp insurance is down. The retirement was an increase, and that's basically just on the increase in wages. An increase in some operating expense, an increase in building and repair maintenance, an increase for dues and subscription, an increase for office expense, an increase in technology, and an increase of the medical supply COVID. Most of that's due because of the COVID right now. A decrease in fire prevention, a decrease in our general liability insurance. Long-term capital, basically that's an increase of basically expenditures for the FEMA grant. And then there's a decrease there for radio, pager repair and replacement, also with the physicals, the medical physicals decrease. An increase for legal fees, basically professional services. And then the last ones that say fire services, grants and donations, basically that's the live fire training center, because we keep the books for that, and we had to have basically a year-end budget adjustment so the auditing police don't slap me on the hand again like they did last year. So overall, we didn't have to get into our fund balance with the expenses. Hopefully we can keep them in control for the until June 30th. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about any particular line items on this budget adjustment.
Now, our year ends June 30th?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I guess then basically we just need a motion then.
I'll make a motion to receive the budget amendment number 1.
I'll support.
We have a motion by Phelps and support by Beckman to accept the budget adjustment. Is there any discussion? Anybody? Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Phelps,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Aldrich,
Yes.
Fox.
Yes.
Verplank,
Yes.
Pullen,
Yes.
and Miller. You need to be unmuted again, Aaron. Okay, sorry.
Yes. Sorry, it's habit to mute myself when I have dogs.
No, that's a good habit.
Okay, moving on. Accounts payable. Could I have a motion to pay the bills?
I'll make a motion to pay the bills, the amount of $112,843.89.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Phelps and a second by Pullen to pay the bills in the amount of $112,843.89. Is there any discussion? No questions? We are also agreeable today. Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Phelps,
Yes.
Pullen,
Yes.
Baldrich,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Verplank,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
Okay, moving on, could we have a financial report, Peter?
Okay, so this is page 14 and page 15 in your packet. With the revenues, this includes the budget adjustment we just approved. We've collected just shy of 97% of our projected revenues for the year. And we'll make over the 100% because of 35,000 and 12,000 from the other two entities. We'll have that money any day. And there's a couple other collections coming in, but more by and large, we've collected everything on the revenue side. The expense side, we've spent 73% of what we've budgeted so far. We still have payroll for the next 6-7 weeks. And we have a couple other expenses that we're gonna collect. I don't know, does anybody have any particular line item questions or?
Oh, we're doing pretty good there in the expenses, even though we've still got some coming in. We're what 72.98?
Yeah,
Is that right?
that's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. So we should come out okay.
Looking out, Peter, for the remainder, do you think the 73 is gonna hold?
I didn't hear that question.
I was saying, do you think that lower expense ratio or whatever is gonna hold for the rest of the year?
Well, I think so, but we do have, if you look at the long-term capital, there's still a lot of money there, and we've got the boat dock we're gonna pay, so I don't know, it's gonna jump up, it's gonna get in probably the low 90s, because that 178,000 is spent. We have the boat dock there and the new boat, and that's gonna chew that right up.
Right.
And I guess in a lot of the payroll line items, they're gonna be expensed out, so. And then you get down, there's not that much money left over. It all depends on basically the call volume, and we keep Mr. Mantles's hand close to the table, so we'll do well.
Okie dokie. All right, if everybody's satisfied with the financial report, we'll move on to the fire chief comments.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll go through this very briefly. Basically, what I think the board members need to know is we're down about 16% on calls. That's really the summary. We all know call volume is down, and everything else is just kind of follow the same pattern. Most important thing is we're down about 16%. So if there's no other questions on that, I'll just move on to the next item on the agenda, which is community risk reduction. And want to let you know that the state of Michigan has had 57 fatal fires year to date, 17 from the last meeting. What I forgot to mention on item number A was fire calls we've had 3 fires, structure fires, residential structure fires in the last 10 days. One as recently as 1:30 this morning, a structure fire in Township. We had a structure fire a week ago Sunday, early morning on Sunday, and then we had one in Douglas. So each municipality had a structure fire. Everything really worked out great with the police response because their road patrols are driving around. Swift action by homeowners, swift action by the police, swift action by the responding duty officer with fire extinguishers, and I can share this with you, we probably would have had a death if it wasn't for smoke alarms. An example, this morning, the homeowner, actually both residential structure fires, the homeowners were woken up by smoke alarms. What was interesting is the one this morning were smoke alarms the fire department installed about 3 years ago. And that homeowner has talked to me several times this morning and is very appreciative to the firefighters for doing the blitz in that area years ago, because one of those smoke alarms woke her up in the middle of the night and she was able to escape her home that had a fire underneath of it. So the power of smoke detectors is right there. So again, 17 deaths since the last meeting. The next thing on the agenda would be grant applications. We have submitted a request for reimbursement for COVID-related medical supplies and labor issues. We'll see what happens with that. That concludes my chief comments.
Okay, moving on. We'll move on to community risk reduction.
We did that. I got that, Jane. We're on number 10, unfinished business.
Okay. Did you want to do this grant application or not?
All that was is just, there's no match on it. It was just an announcement that we filed a grant to be reimbursed from FEMA for COVID-related expenses. So there's no match or approval involved. We're hopeful that we'll get something back, but I don't know how it's going to work out.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business, hazard pay.
So the board directed me to find the pulse of the area in Michigan as far as hazard pay. Reached out to a few of the people that I trust on this, one south, one north. One of them is Chief Klotzbaugh, who is very much president of the Chiefs Association in Michigan. I won't go over the memo. You've got it. Basically, what was concluded on this was a suggestion: if the counts are if the fire board feels compelled to issue hazard pay for responders, my suggestion is to wait until the federal government decides what they're going to do. There is a bill in the Senate for hero hazard pay, and my suggestion would be wait and see what they do, because if you issue something, it could negate anything that's done locally. And one way to do that is with a resolution. So I also reached out to Chief Weiss from South Haven to find out what he's doing. And he pretty much is in a wait and see what happens mode. And then he'll advise his fire board on what to do. My understanding is there's a Senate bill that would give employees a $13 an hour hazard pay bonus, retroactive from January 1st through the whole calendar year, and up to $25,000. I think that should be up to federal government. The fire service is very sensitive to the economic times. We appreciate anybody considering to pay us more for it. Some people are very uncomfortable with it. Some people are not. So if you want, you could do a resolution. You could do it next month, stating that you support hazard pay if you decide to, and evaluate it at the end of the year.
The end of the year, do you mean the end of the fiscal year or the end of the calendar year?
The end of the calendar year. The end of the calendar year, yeah.
Okay.
Have we taken a look at, I mean, from a financial standpoint, various scenarios, whether there's any kind of grant or match or whatever to defray some of that cost? And so absent that, I think it'd be really helpful to know what kind of number we're talking about, so we know what kind of hole we're stepping into here.
Oh, that's a very good point, Dan. Oh, Jane, can I respond to that?
Go ahead.
We would have to look at the budget very seriously and see what kind of compensation the board would direct. And obviously there would have to be a budget adjustment because nobody budgeted for this. And certainly our budget can't support $25,000. We look to the federal government in this situation for the compensation, if any compensation is going to be due. If we decide to do something on ourselves, on our own, we're going to need to determine how much and figure out what we're going to give up to do that.
Well, I think, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I guess what I'm uncomfortable with is there are ways to look at this. One of the things was, well, let's give people comp time. Well, there's two issues with that. Comp time around here is virtually non-existent. Number two, that does nothing for the paid on call. I'm not going to do anything that, there's no equity in that. So we benefit and the paid on call don't. So I'm not in favor of that. So we would have to decide what kind of amounts we want to achieve. In one regard, everything we do is hazardous. Just everything on the highway is probably as hazardous as any fire as I've fought. However, this is something that we could easily bring home to our families. That adds a whole different dimension. Something happens to us, we get injured, it affects our families. But this disease could be contracted by our families. That's a deal changer for many of us. And that's why we take this very seriously. So I'm almost to the point, let's wait and see. And then we should discuss it each month and see how we feel about it. No one has come to me saying, I want more money. However, the public recognizes we're on the front lines and we are at such high risk. The whole United States knows it. The whole world knows it. Most likely, we're the ones that are going to get this disease. And it has an impact on all of us. So my advice, wait and see. We can discuss the resolution at another time. Once we decide what we want to do, figure out how we're going to pay for it. It might have to be in the next fiscal year.
I think that's
Yeah.
a smart way to approach it, at least in part because with some of the state funding issues and the tax funding issues and what have you, it could get scary around here from a financial standpoint real easy.
Yes.
And we don't want to go ahead and do something when maybe this HEROES Act would pay for it and they would not do it because we've done it. Does that make sense to
Right.
anybody?
Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, Jane, thank you. I think I like Greg's idea of take the wait and see approach to see what the federal government's going to do. And maybe if they do nothing, we get creative towards the end of the year and look at maybe we do have a little bit in the budget to work with. And maybe we get creative and go to some of the restaurants and get matching gift certificates or something, so our dollars go further. I'm just trying to think outside the box here.
Yeah, and I think this is a good outside of the box discussion, but I don't think it's one we really need to have today. I'm all for
I agree.
half
Yeah, I
of
agree.
the federal government. And I don't know, whenever I get money from them, I put it in the bank because I'm not sure we're going to be able to keep it. So
Yeah,
I'm
I think,
taking a wait and see attitude about a lot of things.
yeah.
So I think we're good with that for now. I don't think we need to act or do anything on this. It's a good discussion and it's some stuff to think about.
Yeah,
before the
I
next.
agree.
So
Totally.
moving on, we'll go to 10B, attorney representation.
Yes, Jane, if I could just comment before we jump to the next one. I just want to share with you that the firefighters are really pleased that you would think of us in that context and you would even bring this up as far as the hazard pay. So they asked me to express that to you. Moving on, the
Good,
next
thank you.
memo is a directive by the board to contact the attorney as far as a conflict of interest. And pretty much his reply is shown in italics in blue. And basically, he does not feel there is a conflict of interest for reasons explained there. If there's any questions with this, I will try to answer.
I don't really see where there's a big conflict. You know, the BOA is part of the fire department.
Yes. But it's just nice to check and
Oh, yeah. Cover your,
make sure we're on the right track. So it was a very
cover
good point to
cover
bring
your
up.
back.
Eric?
The only thing I would say, and I agree with this, and I don't have any issues with Jeff Sluggett being both. I was on the Board of Appeals meeting, and there were times where I believe Jeff might have or should have clarified that he was speaking as the Board of Appeals attorney and not the fire department attorney, because there was a little confusion when we let him talk a little bit and we didn't let other people talk, but he was speaking for the Board of Appeals. And it was, I don't know, maybe Aaron, you have an opinion on that too. I don't have a problem with it. I just think when he needs to make it known his role in these meetings.
Which has?
Yeah, I agree with that, Eric. It is a little bit strange when he's representing both in the same meeting. You know, in 1 second he's representing the fire department and their defense of the decision. And then the next second he's representing the Board of Appeals and helping us understand how to move forward. And then you have the appellant who may not understand that dynamic. And I can see how from their point of view, it can look strange or like there's a conflict. But on the other hand, having another lawyer involved with the Board of Appeals and having them understand to the depth that Jeff understands the history and the sort of dynamics of the fire department is a real challenge. So I don't feel strongly enough to say it'd be worth bringing in another counsel for the Board of Appeals.
Well, I agree, Aaron, because I mean, this is expensive enough, and to bring another attorney up to snuff on what's going on would be expensive. And
The last thing I'd ever argue for is more attorneys, but no matter what the subject was. But I thought one of the sort of background thoughts on this whole notion had to do with a fear that having Jeff in both roles exposed the district or the Board of Appeals, whoever, to allegations from any appellant, one of which we could probably guess who that might be, give them opportunity to claim the whole structure of the thing was wrong, or the opinions were not, fair because of it, or whatever, that it was a defensive move. But as I say, on balance, fewer attorneys, the better.
Aaron, we just have one attorney for everything in Douglas. I mean, I sit on the ZBA, and I think it's the same attorney that you guys have in Douglas. I don't think we have separate attorneys for those separate boards.
Yeah, I think that's accurate as far as I know.
And I think this is the same situation. And probably Saugatuck either, they have one attorney for everything.
well, if Jeff is comfortable with this, then I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, I am
No
too.
one has to defend it in court. So,
I would agree, and I would think as if Jeff really put himself in a situation that he didn't feel comfortable, he would recuse himself, and we'd have to go down that road. But if he feels comfortable, then I'm comfortable with it. I just, next time if we get in that, I would like him to state, I am representing the Board of Appeals, and this is the discussion, just so we know who the players are, so to speak.
Right, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Shane, may I speak?
Sure.
I will relay that to Jeff and make sure that if we have another Board of Appeal, that is brought up. I'll let him know. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business, the insurance services ISO survey results. Take it
Here we
away.
go. The long overdue ISO survey. What happened with this is we never got it in December when it was concluded. And we thought, what in the world is going on with this ISO report? And it was an oversight on ISO. Yes, ISO made a mistake.
No.
So, yeah, we're going to raise their premium. So basically, ISO changed the way the rating system occurs. They changed it in 2014. The first ISO survey since I became chief was in 2013. It was 2 weeks after I started in 2013. They're good for 3 to 5 years based on the climate of ISO and availability of a surveyor. In 2014, they changed the way they rate their classification. Typically, it was one rating, one number. And for those of you who weren't aware of the rating number, it was a 5, which is very good. We're a combination department. We aren't full-time. We aren't entirely volunteer. We have a fire code. We have more calls than anybody in the county. A lot of dynamics there. We also have a big area with no hydrants. So we were a 5. In 2014 of July, they decided to split the rating. Basically, if you're within 5 miles of the fire station with a viable water supply, you qualify for 1 rating. If you're beyond 5 miles with no water supply, you would be assigned a secondary rating. It's a split rating, a 610, a 59, a 410. So one of my goals as chief was to get that rating lowered, realizing that insurance costs are going up, and the better we can get a rating, the better it is for our taxpayers. Very difficult. So we went to a split. We went to a 4-10. The 10 is shocking. So what Chris has on the screen is it shows our response coverage area, basically 28 square miles. So if you drove from the fire station to anywhere in the fire district, if it exceeded 5 miles and there was no water supply, you became a 10. The next slide will show you that area, basically south of the washout. So it's just south of 126th, and it goes up to the washout. Now, if we had continuity from north of the washout, some of those houses could capture a rating of 5 or less. But those houses that were a 5 now become a 10. In that area that Chris has marked, those houses go from a 5 rating to a 10. The whole rest of the fire district is a 4, and that will be on your screen. So I'm proud of the department that we lowered it from a 5 to a 4 in about 98% of our district. A little over 2% is a 10. Here's the interesting part. We were 900ths away from a 3. Again, 900ths away from a 3. We found in the survey some things that were omitted. For example, we didn't get credit for some training. We didn't get credit for pre-plans. We are working with ISO for some additional revisit the survey. Do we think we'll get to a 3? We don't know, but there's that possibility. So we're really proud of that. Unfortunately, insurance premiums have gone up, so the premium break on a 5 to a 4 is almost negligible. But the important thing to know is a 10 sounds severe. It's like you have no fire department, but it's in a small area. Basically, ISO is penalizing you if you're far away from the station and there's no water supply. This is something we've been harping on for probably 15 years I've been here. You need a water supply. One of the reasons we got a 4 is they take a hard look at mutual aid. I don't have mutual aid agreements. I have automatic aid agreements. I was the first one in Allegan County to do that. Those automatic aid agreements give us credit for Ganges Fire Department to responding within 5 miles of their station. It gives credit to the eastern or northern side on Grass Cup, 5 miles. So that's what helps us go from a 5 to a 4, plus our training ramped up, everything ramped up. So did the cost of insurance. So I'm real excited to share with you that Chris actually did these maps before we got the original ISO reports. Chris, could you just scroll back to ISO reports? Chris created this stuff without ISO. This is from ISO. And it shows, I can't point, Chris can. It shows a little white area where the hand is. That's the 10 area. And it's basically Bendemeer. It's just like 126 north to the washout. Those areas are a 10. So their insurance is going to go up significantly. There's no water supply there. One of the things we did years ago with the previous township administration is we suggested putting an underground tank at Sunset Park on Lakeshore Drive. And the response we got at the time was, how are we going to pay for that? In my opinion, there should be somebody should go after granting. Somebody should figure out creative ways to put an underground tank there for the people. A 12-foot emergency road, this is a good argument for the neighbors to give up a 12-foot easement so we could go from north to south through emergency road and try to capture some of those northern areas and lower their insurance premiums. So that's where we're at with this. I'm really happy to share it with you. Are there any questions?
I'd be curious whether, maybe Griffin's a better person to answer this, but whether that those sorts of provisions might ought to be handled with a special assessment district, since it pertains only to that specific area.
Good point.
I don't know if you can see on my screen as well too, the area I did highlight in kind of bluish here, it's hard to see, but this would be the reduced area of this would be the only area of a 10 if there was a contiguous path from Lakeshore Drive that we can actually get down just north of 126th from our station at the 5 mile measurement. But because we can't currently, we can't use that as a measurement.
And if I remember right, one of the property owners in this area, the premium went up $650 from a 5 to a 10.
They were right somewhere here on Chestnut, or I believe it was.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's the gift that keeps on giving too. I mean, that's.
But this just shows you how ISO values water supply nowadays for the structure fires we have. That's why they did a split rating.
Griffin, did you want to weigh in on this discussion, or you can pass if you want?
Griffin has us all muted.
I have muted him, I think. Maybe here, let me try again.
The only thing I would say is with a lot of these, these different suggestions, my understanding is the board's open to hear any suggestions you all may want to offer. I can't really talk anymore about them because I'm really hearing about them for the first time. But I think if you all feel strongly about some of these suggestions, as a fire board, you absolutely could make a recommendation to the township board, and the township board could go from there.
I think that's
good point, Griffin.
I think that's the only way we can do it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, well, it's the only way we can do it. So yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Jane, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think once people's insurance
Oh, no.
premiums start getting renewed, I think they'd be more receptive to speaking about perhaps a pass-through emergency lane from north to south. You know, we realize the water tank is a bigger deal in Sunset Park, but it's still something to be considered. You realize we've got to go north, we have to go south to go north. All that water for that area has to be trucked from near Overijssel Lumber. That's a long way on a fire.
Yeah, it is.
And to put a underground tank there, maybe 20, 30,000 gallons of water, again, a special assessment, leave it to the people. What level of coverage and service do they want? And leave it to them. So to Griffin's point, you know, they haven't been exposed to this. This was the other administration. So now that we have the ISO report, now we know what it takes to get a different rating. You know, basically is, do the residents want a 12-foot lane, and do they want a water supply? And we may be able to minimize the impact of insurance rate from a 4 versus a 10. So.
Yeah, I agree. So anything else about the ISO rating?
I would just say that to Greg's point, it's an intelligent move, and it's a responsible move to be ahead of the game on this, so that you're offering people who, when they get the increased insurance bills, are rightly going to be upset and start looking for somebody to blame. And this getting out ahead of this with a recommendation to the township or whatever of the various ways that you might mitigate this, I think is smart. You've got an answer before somebody's all over you with how come my insurance is going through the roof. So,
Well, I think this puts us in the homeownership's laps now, because they've made this split and it's not hurting the rest of us. I hate to talk like that, but you know, if that little area was bringing down the whole township's rating just because they don't have water, that would be, you know, a real issue. But now it's bringing their own, now it's in their pocketbook, so maybe they'll want to be creative.
I agree with that, Eric.
We just, with this, oh, Jane, may I?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
We just wanted to make sure, particularly the township representation understands that what changed was the way they rate an area. The property protection classification rating changed to a split. That is the answer on how they evaluate this, and subsequently premiums will change. It's like you're getting penalized for no water supply and being farther away from the fire department. Well, if the fire board wants, in the town wants to build another fire station south, we have one in Ganges, and we benefit from that. So that's not a solution. We can't really change distance, but we can do is change, you know, water supplies and get it down to a bare minimum area that has an impact economically.
I think what should happen here is, if we could, maybe put a PowerPoint together explaining this in detail, and then we go to the township and explain what changed, how this affects them in that area. I mean, Stacy and I can do it, but we're not ISO experts. And I know Griffin is listening, which I appreciate him being on here, but maybe we can come up with something that we can put it in layman's terms so the people that live there understand what we're trying to accomplish. Just a thought.
Maybe you could take Greg along with you.
Absolutely.
Or Chris.
I'd be happy to do that and explain to the township what's changed, what solutions are there, and what we're stuck with. I'd be happy to do that.
Do we notify the residents this effects before that meeting? Is that typically done, or?
No, I know one of the big one of the major things I've had is the advantage of working with Mark Becken, who's really up on ISO. He's been very helpful with this whole program, and he's been a real guiding light for me. And we've been working on solutions and what can we do. And some of the areas that seem to be on the line came in as a 4, even though they looked like they were in a 10 area. And it's kind of like, don't ask any questions, just renew it as a 4. So, you know, so wait until the premium is, the policy is renewed and you're notified of a classification change. So what we're doing is we're going to try to see if we can get to a 3. We don't know if we'll be successful, but they have not been receptive to changing a 10 to a 9. So the thing is, understand what happened. Some things you can't change. I think the emergency lane would help, and we could appeal ISO and ask them to change that if the residents decide to put in a 12-foot lane. So this is something for discussion, but we got to make them aware that ISO changed the way they rate things. Now, not all insurance companies use this. State Farm does not use ISO. There are insurance companies that do not use the service of ISO. They have their own formula.
Oh.
So some of them may not change, but I do know of one property owner that went to a 10. I also know another one that was supposed to be in a 10 area. His remained a 4.
Okay. Are we all set on ISO now? Let's move on to, we have item B under new business. We have to set a date for the fiscal year budget approval public hearing. We've run into a glitch with this. So Pete, do you want to explain what's going on?
Well, you gotta click your unmute button, Peter. I unmuted you. You have to click the button on your end now.
Mute now. Okay.
There you go.
I've unmuted myself. So item C is we're going to go over the budget for 2021 with Greg, but we need to set a public hearing, and our next regular board meeting is the 15th of June. Well, we have to have this budget approved by all the 3 entities before we could have the public hearing. The issue was I was just brought aware of the township had changed their monthly board meetings to the second Wednesday and not the first Wednesday of the month. So we have to have this published in the local paper, and it's only a weekly paper. So you could do it for the 15th, but if there's any pushback from anybody else, we'd have to cancel that public hearing and then go to another public hearing because we have to have it in the paper 6 days before the date of the 15th, and that's the 9th, and with a weekly paper. It gets to be complicated. We can go ahead and just say we're going to do it the 15th, and we're not going to have any issues with anybody, but nobody knows the answer to that. We've had some issues in the past with some of our membership, so I don't know. Or we could have a special meeting for the public hearing, like on the 29th or the 30th. So I guess it's up to the board where you want to go with this. But we do have to have a public hearing before July 1st.
My feeling is, just because I get to have a feeling, is that possibly we could just go ahead and schedule the public hearing and hope there's no pushback. If there is, we can always cancel it. I don't really want to pay for another meeting just to go to approve the budget. So my recommendation is to go ahead and schedule the meeting for the 15th, right, Pete?
Yeah, that's our regular, yes.
And then if there's pushback from any of the communities, then we'll cancel it.
Question. Will the community see this before we have the public hearing?
Yes, every Douglas, Saugatuck, and the township, everybody has to, their boards have to approve this in during one of their meetings that they are.
Okay, so if they don't approve it, then we can't have the public hearing, correct?
Correct. It's all or none.
Okay, thank you.
And it'll be a little bit different this year, but typically the fire board rep and Chief Janik would be available to present that to each municipality, I think is how it's gone in the past. And Eric will put together a very nice document that explains the differences and how it goes. So it usually is pretty well done. I'm guessing via Zoom this year. So,
And we're not asking for any millage increase, so,
right.
you know, it should go through okay with the communities, but one never knows.
So, or the other, another option was we could cancel our June 15th meeting and just push it back to the
And I thought of
22nd
that.
or the 29th, you know, but tonight we have to set this public hearing date.
Or, yeah, that's a good idea, Peter. I was thinking of that one too. We could just push our meeting back in June. So it's up to you guys.
Okay, so we have to give Saugatuck, Douglas, and the township the budget before we have the public meeting, because it's kind of backwards on the thing here. That's where I got confused. Okay.
I think that because we're not changing anything, I say we just keep it the way it is, and I don't think we'll get much pushback from the cities and the township.
Well, even if we do, we should have a little bit of time. We have to call a special meeting, we call a special meeting. But if we don't have to, doing it this way, we're gonna hope we don't have to.
Was that a motion from someone?
Oh, yeah, okay. I'll make a motion to set the date for the 2021 fiscal year budget approval public hearing, June 15th, 2020, at
I'll
4
second.
p.m.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Pullen, and who seconded it? Scott? Did
Scott.
you? Okay. And a second by Scott. Is there any more discussion? It's a little confusing, but basically the three communities have to meet and pass the budget, and then we have to hold the public hearing and pass it as well. And it has to be done before June 30th, or the budget police will come from Lansing. So
I'll come for you.
we don't want Pete to get in trouble, because he likes to keep his nose clean. So with that being said, we'll take a roll call vote.
Yes, ma'am. Pullen,
Yes.
Phelps,
Yes.
Aldrich,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Verplank,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter, you're on.
Okay, so the last item is the proposed budget that Greg and myself and Chris Manos met here a month ago, and we kind of put together. Page one is just basically the revenues. And this past year, we levied 2.2 mils. Our proposed is just basically 2.2 mils. And the property taxes make up 99% of our budget. And so basically you see the city of Saugatuck, $364,000 revenue, Saugatuck Township, $747,000, and the city of Douglas, $380,000, and some couple $1,000 here and there for fire services, plan reviews, cost recovery, and interest. So the revenue side is just shy of $1.5 million for the budget, for the revenue side. Page two is basically the line item. We're looking at the 2021 requested budget, which is the far right column. And you can just basically see the board salaries for the board meetings, chief salary, the officer salaries, the career firefighters' wages, and then all the other operational paid on call stipend, the fire calls, medical calls. Basically, everything's about the same. The only increase is the line item one. The chief will touch on this, is the one that's the 708, the career firefighter. Basically, it's going from 251 up to 306,000. And then page two, you know, you can look what the projected activity this current year compared to what the requested budget. There's the majority of it is all right there. And the long-term capital is $136,000 less this year. That's because it's high this year due to the FEMA grant that we received from the federal government. So Greg, I don't know if you want to touch on that career firefighter line item.
There's two things I wanted to point out, if I may, to the fire board. Number one, I put in, and this is strictly up to the fire board, there were no raises per se. In consideration and being sensitive to the economic impact of COVID-19 and potential for property values to stagnate or reduce, I put in a 2.5% cost of living. That can be removed by the fire board. That could be postponed by the fire board, or it could be followed through with the fire board. I called around neighboring jurisdictions to find out what they were doing. I spoke to one municipality that suspended for the fiscal year all cost of living. The other municipalities I talked to did not want to do that. They did not want to get behind on things. They maintained their cost of living plus their increases. The fire service, a lot of them are collective bargaining. It does not take into account economic times. Most of them were doing raises. I kept it very modest at 2.5% with the condition that this is strictly up to the fire board. Point two, when we went to 24-hour shifts, which is working very well. Two examples, our 24-hour shift people that stay at the station around the clock were the first ones to get to some cardiac arrest situations. They were also the first one to get to a fire. So I'm real happy with the 24-hour shift. The downside has been we lost our fire clerk ability during the day. One day we have 30 phone calls. The next day it's like nothing. So what I saw was a deficit for the fire department as far as a fire clerk. So I put $50,000 in career firefighter for what if we hired a clerk in 6 or 7 months. That clerk would get about $40,000. My preference is that clerk be an EMT at a minimum and a firefighter, at least an EMT. They can do backup calls. We have some days there's only 3 of us here. So the downside of the 24 hours, we lost personnel during the day. Well, everything is a compromise. Everything's a balance. So the budget was capable. So again, I put 50,000 and 10,000 for benefits, $40,000 salary for a firefighter EMT, which is what we started the rest of them. If it's a clerk with no qualifications, that rate needs to go down. And I'm not particularly in favor of, I've done it both ways, and there's pros and cons either ways. So those are the 2 things I wanted to point out. The board needs to decide, do they want to impose a cost of living at 2.5%, or do they want to withdraw that? And I just want you to know about the projected, there's money in there if we decide to hire another person as a clerk, firefighter, EMT.
And the other thing I wanted to point out, the loan payment, this 42,000, that's the third line item from the bottom on page 3. That this is our last payment on that KME fire truck that we have. So in February, that truck will be paid in full.
Oh, good.
I don't know, do any board members have any particular line item questions?
No, just if we do the 2.5%, we have to make a motion on that, I believe.
Well, we can worry about that in July.
Yeah, this is next year's budget, not this year.
Right, yeah. I know, but we still get it done all the way.
There again, I think it's probably prudent to wait a bit.
Wait and see.
The more, you're exchanging some amount of time for some level of closer to certainty as to what's going to happen with monies from wherever and status of all of it.
But don't we have to approve this budget so it'll be effective July 1st?
It's not a mandate to spend, though. All it is an approval of the budget. We can decide how to spend it at a future meeting.
Okay,
I think it's better to budget for it and not need it than the other way around.
Absolutely.
yeah, I agree. I agree.
And I think this new position needs some discussion. We keep adding full-time positions. I just think we should need to discuss this a little further. Not that I'm saying we don't need it, but I just think it needs some discussion.
Basically, what we need is.
There we stand with the budget. Is there any other questions about the budget? Hearing none, we'll move on.
Well,
I
Dane,
think we need a motion, ma'am, to send that to the 3 municipalities.
Oh. Oh,
Sorry,
Have a
there
motion.
should be a sample motion on your agenda packet, I believe, too.
I'm sorry. Somebody need to make a motion.
I'll make a motion, whatever the sample motion is. I don't have it in my packet.
yeah, I don't.
It's
see
on
that.
the screen now,
There you go.
right here.
All I got is set the date and,
You wanna-
Approve the request, that one?
Yeah,
Yes.
You want to do it, Scott? C, 11C?
oh, 11C, okay. Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2021 budget. Request, send a proposal to Saugatuck Douglas and Township.
I'll support that.
We have a motion to send the 2021 budget proposal to Saugatuck City, Saugatuck Douglas City, and Saugatuck Township for their respective approvals. Isn't that what you said, Scott?
Exactly.
I thought so.
I can't read real well right now.
Is there any discussion? Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
yes, ma'am. Phelps,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes,
Aldrich,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Verplank,
Yes.
Pullen,
Yes,
and Miller.
Yes.
Thank you. And
Okay, moving on, we have some correspondence. We had Brooks Lampins. Thank you. And then there's another thank you.
Chris,
the
could
video,
you,
if
I
I may
think,
play it real quick, ma'am.
I think you guys will like this.
Give me just a second to. All right. Can you all see the kid
Yeah.
on the screen?
Yeah.
no. I don't see anything.
Maybe this won't work.
Seeing but no sound.
Yeah.
Sound.
Well,
Well, anyway, it was really cute. It was a recording. He was thanking police and fire. Maybe,
I think it's just playing too slowly over the internet to.
yeah, yeah. I think
he
you get
says-
the idea. It was a big thank you to police and fire. He's got 2 badges on there for a birthday drive-by.
Yeah.
The kids really, really enjoy it like Brooks did. So it was a real cute text I got from a friend of mine. So just wanted to share that with you. That's
Sorry.
all I have on correspondence. That's
It looked
okay,
like-
Chris.
It looks like a young Greg Janik to me.
Yeah.
Especially with the jammies. Okay, moving on to public comment. Is there any public comment? Anybody with their hand raised? Chris, you want to unmute everybody?
Yeah, I think the only ones, Griffin, did you have anything? And Eric Kirchard is the only other one in here, and Kyle Myers, so nothing. And Eric, all I can see is Eric's picture, so I think that's everybody.
Okay, so Fireboard,
Jane,
yes.
may I? I just wanted to share with the board, because some of them are not aware, we had a Board of Appeals public hearing on Thursday, and we were very pleased with the ruling that it denied the appellant the appeal and allowed us to read this place. We are currently working with the developer to, we understand he's reached out to Chris. Unfortunately, Chris hasn't been available on the weekends, and we'll try to get with the appellant to see what they have to offer. We're going to try to get it in writing. We're very overbooked this week for meetings because construction is ramped up, and there are things with downtown Saugatuck, with construction projects, with the school graduation ceremony and parades that we only have so much time. So we just want to share with you that the Board of Appeals public hearing did rule in our favor. One last thing I wanted to share with you, and it was not in the board agenda. I got it today. It's another $2,480 bill, strictly related to the North Shores development. That's just for 1 month. So it's about $2,500 more for legal expense. That's all I have, Jane.
Okay, moving on. Fireboard comments. Scott, you got anything?
Nothing today.
Stacy?
Nope.
Eric?
No, but at some point, we're going to have to address the Board of Appeals cost.
Yeah, fee.
I don't know how we're going to do, I mean, as far as what we're going to charge, a fee schedule. I'm sorry. Should have.
We're working on researching that and actually have some good ideas we plan to hopefully bring to the board, the fire board, next month. So
Okay. The other question I have is the ad hoc committee we talked about, long-term water supplies. Did that fall dead in the water, or where do we stand?
So to speak.
My understanding, may I answer that, Jane? Or
Please
okay.
do. I got
My
you.
best understanding of this at the time, it was commingled with kind of discussing about the development, and it just wasn't the right time to discuss that. I'm hopeful in the future. The answer to your question is there was no meeting scheduled. I'm hoping in the future that we can get with the township and discuss, you know, try to align with what their vision is on water infrastructure in the future with the ad hoc committee. So when the time's right, I'm confident they will be willing to sit down and try to find out how we can move forward with water supplies in the township.
Good
Okay.
enough. Thank you.
Okay, Dan,
Yes?
any comments?
Oh, Peter got away. I wanted to ask him about whether there had been progress on the suggestion, I think, 2 meetings back, maybe more, about developing a dashboard presentation for the website, financial dashboard for the district to be presented on the website to show, you know, at minimum revenues year to year, expenses year to year, whatever, calls year to year, just, you know, critical number measures that, you know, not unlike the dashboard, at least in idea, not unlike the financial dashboards that are, I think, required for the jurisdictions, the cities and townships in the state.
Well, just knowing what's going on, I think Peter's up to his
I was
eyeballs.
going to say he's probably up to his eyeballs, and I can search him out separately.
He hasn't probably done anything yet, but he hasn't had a lot of time. Greg, did you want to say something?
No, just that I'd be happy to reach out to him at any point if Dan wants assistance or support. Or right now, I'll just leave it between Dan and Peter. If I can help, let me know.
No problem. Also,
All right.
any takers on the pickup truck yet,
Lots of lookers.
including me?
Lots of lookers. Let's make a deal.
Maybe I need a pickup truck. Okay, Aaron?
Nothing from me.
All right. Having done that, could I have a motion to adjourn?
Sure, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Or,
Okay, I have a motion by Fox and support by Beckman to adjourn. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Aldrich,
Yes.
Beckman,
yes.
Fox,
Yes.
LePlank,
Yes.
Phelps,
Yes.
Pullen.
I think we lost her.
Yeah, she's not back on the screen, but I'm not sure. I can't see her video, so. And
Well, we have a majority.
Miller, are you good to adjourn?
Maybe somebody needs to do a check on her.
Maybe
Welfare check, get a truck out there.
Okay, are you okay?
Good.
we are adjourned.